We're starting in a moment. In just a moment, we'll be starting, so give us just 1 second. Today, we're a little bit earlier because of the fast day and oncoming traditions that we don't study anything that's not about Torah. Okay, welcome to today's lunch break with the Rabbi. As we mentioned, we are starting a bit earlier today because of the fast that's going to be tonight, and that's where we're going to be discussing a little bit of what that's about. So this afternoon, as we mentioned, we don't usually discuss other concepts of Torah, as Torah is an idea that brings joy to people, and therefore we are going to be discussing a little bit about Tisha B'Av, which begins this evening. Tisha B'Av literally means the 9th of Av. It is a time where we mourn the destruction of the Holy Temple. It is also a time where many other atrocities happened to the Jewish people, and therefore it is considered the saddest day in Jewish history. It is a fast day, which is about 25 hours. It begins tonight at 8:06 and ends tomorrow at 8:45. It is a time where we refrain from wearing leather shoes. We sit on the floor and we read Lamentations and mourn the destruction and the sadness and the exile that we endure. But let's go back a little bit to the story of the destruction of the temple, especially about the Second Temple. The Talmud tells us about the destruction of the Second Temple, that Titus, there was the king at the time, sent a general to go and destroy the Holy Temple. When he came to destroy the Holy Temple, he wasn't sure if this was the thing that should be done, as he knew that in the past the enemies of the Jewish people have suffered terrible retribution by God, and therefore he wasn't sure, does God really want this, and should he do it? And therefore he takes an arrow and shoots it to the east. It falls on Jerusalem. He shoots it to the south. It falls in Jerusalem. He shoots it to the north. It falls in Jerusalem. To the west, and it falls in Jerusalem. And he looks at it, any way he shoots the arrow goes into Jerusalem. He finally meets a young child who's walking by, and as we know, we read in the story of Purim that Haman did the same idea, that the way they were able to be inclined in having a little bit of prophecy, so to speak, was by asking a young child who unassumingly says something what they learned that day, and he quotes a verse saying that God will take revenge on his enemies. With that, he turns to heaven and he says, Almighty God, you want to destroy your temple and you want me to be your messenger? You want me to do your dirty work? Go find somebody else to do your dirty work. And with that, he went and he converted, and the Torah tells us that he was then found, that from his generation, the great sages came from him as well. So we look at the story, and we read about what happens, and we see the exile that ultimately the temple was destroyed by the emperor Titus. And even when Titus destroyed the Holy Temple, he took all the vessels and all the wealth that was there from the Holy Temple, and he brought it back with him on a boat on his way back to Rome. And while he was on the boat, he was priding himself with the fact that saying, look how great I am, look how, and championing himself by saying, wow, I was able to be victorious over the God of Israel. Look what I've accomplished. And with that, all of a sudden, waves started coming and his boat started hustling that it was about to sink. And Titus goes, look at the God of the Jews. Look what he can do. The only thing he's able to do is punish him, to pay retribution by water. He did it to Pharaoh, and now he's trying to do it to me. With that, the waves have calmed. And a voice of heaven came out and said, you, Titus the evil, you think you are so powerful that you're able to destroy the temple? Guess what? A small creature, the smallest of creatures, the most selfish of creatures, the only creature that takes in but doesn't give out, will destroy you. And at that moment, a mosquito went buzzing right up his nose and started buzzing away, eating at him. Titus felt nothing of it at first. Thought it was just buzzing around. But after a while, the noise in his head was going really crazy and making him nuts, that he couldn't tolerate it. He didn't know what to do. Went to all different kinds of doctors. There was nothing to stop it. Finally, he went by a blacksmith who was banging on his metal, and all of a sudden the mosquito stayed calm. It stopped buzzing around. He said, wow, I found the remedy. So you would hire a blacksmith. If it was a Roman blacksmith, he would pay him. If it was a Jewish blacksmith, he wouldn't pay him. And after a while, the mosquito got used to it as well, and it stopped buzzing, and it continued to start buzzing around again. And for a while, until it was driving him berserk, and eventually that's what killed him. And the Talmud discusses that when Titus was then dead, they opened up and they saw that this mosquito grew as large as a lemon. That's how big it was, that it ate up his whole inside. So God was able to take retribution with the smallest of animal creatures on somebody who thought he was mighty powerful. When we read about more the destruction of the temple, and we read about those that tried to hurt us and hate us, there's one question that always comes, is why does God give the possibility for negative and evil, harmful inclinations? Why is it that there's the possibility for evil in this world? If God is going to take retribution on those that chose to do evil, why create evil? What's the purpose of evil? What's the need for evil to be in this world? Why is there a need for exile? We know that the reason why the Holy Temple was destroyed, the second Holy Temple, was destroyed because of baseless hatred, while the first Holy Temple was destroyed because of idolatry. After the first Holy Temple was destroyed because of idolatry, the sages prayed to God that the temptation of idolatry be removed. And God acknowledged and acquiesced, and the temptation of idolatry was removed. That's why today you will notice that none of you have much of an inclination. Nobody says, oh, I wish I can serve an idol. I hope I can have an idol shop open of any sort. Idolatry is basically null and void, besides in some Eastern philosophies, Eastern countries. But why is there the concept? What other temptations? When the sages saw that the temptation of idolatry was removed, they prayed and they said, why don't we take away the temptation of promiscuity? And promiscuity was removed. But after a day or two, they realized that not one hen has hatched an egg in that entire time, that nothing made it. And the sages understood that in order to bring about a good relationship, there had to be a temptation of promiscuity as well. What does that mean? So the Talmud tells us, the Medrash explains that when God created the world, the Medrash says on the sixth day of creation, it says, and it was good. This refers to the godly inclination, to the good inclination. And it was very good. That refers to the evil inclination. Why would you say very good to an evil inclination? What's so impressive about an evil inclination that God created an evil inclination that we needed? Why would God create an evil inclination? Which takes us back to the comment that we mentioned before, the challenges and temptations that we have in this world. If not for temptations that we have for evil, we wouldn't be tempted to do good either. The evil is, so to speak, the impetus, the challenge that gives us the ability to choose right over wrong, good over bad, light over darkness. So to speak, if we were just in a situation where everything was just ideal, we would be robotic. We wouldn't have an impetus or an excitement to do something. So what God does is he gives us a challenge, and he teaches us that life thrives on challenges. What does that mean? Let's go back to when the Jewish people were given the Torah. When the Jewish people were given the Torah, Moses was at Mount Sinai, and the angels came with a complaint and said, hey, it's not fair that the Torah is going to human beings. The Torah should stay up here in heaven. We had it first, let it stay here. Moses was shocked at first. What should he respond? And Moses' response was, he says, were you born to a man and woman? Do you have temptations of the evil inclination? Do you have jealousy? Do you have deceit, thievery? Why should you get the Torah? Look what it says in the Torah. I am God who took you out of Egypt. Have you angels gone down to Egypt? Look what it says in the Torah. Do not kill, do not steal. Do you have the temptations to kill or steal? And over here, Moses was able to silence the angels of their complaints of why they should receive the Torah. With that, Moses brought the Torah down to earth. But what was the theory behind Moses' argument? What was the theory behind the angels' argument? Didn't the angels know what it says in the Torah? And the answer is that the angels knew exactly what it says in Torah. But the Torah is a physical book, of course, applies to physical needs and physical challenges. The angel said, let us have the Torah the way it is in its spiritual, in its soul, without being enclosed in the materialistic different beings that it has. Because we know that everything that's in the Torah today has a spiritual significance, a spiritual source. The physical part of it is just a veneer. The angels wanted to have just the spiritual aspect of those commandments that are mentioned, whether it's the tzitzis, the tefillin, the non-stealing, the negative, or the positive. Which Moses responds and says, no. The Torah is the antidote to the challenges in the world. God gave us challenges. Have you gone down to Egypt? He asks them. Egypt is a concept of limitations and challenges that every single person occurs to in life. And he asks them, have you gone down to Egypt? Meaning, do you have challenges? Life thrives on challenges. Meaning that when we think about what we need to do, how we do it, we're not robotic. We have choices that we make, and because of those choices, we become stronger, healthier. And when we make those right choices, the concepts of reward and punishment are because of the choices we make. If we were just programmed to do what's right, if it was a world just full of good, why would there be reward and punishment? So therefore, Moses comes back to the angels and says, no. The evil inclination, as we mentioned in the Medrash, is very good because that gives us the impetus to stand up against what's wrong and to stand for what is right. Not to succumb to the evil inclination. The evil inclination is there to be transformed. Just like in the story that we began with the general who came to the Holy Temple and turns to God and says, you have many to be able to destroy the Holy Temple. I'm not going to do your dirty work for you. Find somebody else. And he did. And Titus took that option. And because of his haughtiness, he was then, of course, punished. Pharaoh was punished because he decided and elected to take on the dirty work and hurt the Jewish people. And ultimately, when he did that, he lost his freedom of choice. That was his punishment. But God gives every single one of us the freedom of choice, but he lays out for us clearly. As Moses tells the Jewish people in this week's Torah reading and throughout the book of Deuteronomy, see before you, God has given you good and bad, death and life. Choose life. As Moses tells the Jewish people in this week's Torah reading in the 13th verse, and when you cleave to God, you choose life. The Jewish people throughout the ages, we have always been challenged between darkness and light, good versus evil. And yes, evil seems very appeasing, very easy to do, very easy to succumb to. But what's the Torah all about? It's the antidote. It's the guide. The Torah is not just a history book or a book of laws. The Torah comes from the word lessons in life. The Torah is there to guide us to be able to work against and transform the evil inclination. The evil inclination is there to be able to give us the challenge. Human life is about challenges. From the moment we're born, the child tries to get out of that little canal. It's a challenge. A child needs to mature, learn how to walk, learn how to talk, learn to be educated. Everything is a learning skill. Everything is a curve. Learn to be able to navigate the different challenges of the world, because the human condition is so. It's framed in a concept of challenges that makes the human condition grow and prosper. Of course, we would love to just sit back and relax and have a vacation all day of our life, but then what would we accomplish? Work is about, as it says in the book of Proverbs, man was created to work, to bring meaning to work, to transform, to take this world that God has given us and make it a spiritual place. The Holy Temple was a place where holiness, spirituality was at its shining greatness, where a person was able to walk into the Holy Temple and sense spirituality, see divine. When the Holy Temple was destroyed, the destruction of the Holy Temple removed that ability for us to feel and touch divine and see divine in a true and real way. And therefore we today, as we mourn the destruction of the Holy Temple, we mourn it 2,000 years later, but we mourn it not just by remembering what happened in the past, but we mourn it by remembering and recommitting and dedicating ourselves to reconstructing that temple and bringing it back again. The third and holy temple, which will be for eternity. Because we know that every mitzvah we do is another brick and another building block to that third and holy temple. When we mourn the holy temple, it's not just sitting and remembering about something that happened 2,000 years ago, but it's about reliving and reconstructing and bringing back, as the Talmud tells us, that on the 9th day of Av, the birth of the Savior of the Jewish people, of Moshiach, the concept of the redemption came about. Because, as we spoke about on Friday at length, the destruction of the temple was merely a demolition, making place for the construction of the third and great temple. So today, on Tisha B'Av, on the 9th day of Av, as we read in Lamentations that it is called a holiday, because when Mashiach will come, this day will be a holiday. So this day reminds us of the challenges that God has given us that while we are in exile. The time of exile reminds us that we have to utilize every single moment to bring about and to achieve the light. Realize that those challenges that we're given in exile are there to help us to become stronger and unite as one, to be able to bring about the third and holy temple. Even before we begin Tisha B'Av tonight, may we merit to have the third and holy temple rebuilt and reconstructed. And as it says in the book of Lamentations, may Tisha B'Av truly be a remarkable holiday that we'll celebrate together with the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash, the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, may it be now. Amen. Thank you for tuning in. Tomorrow we'll continue to discuss about the concepts and ideas of Tisha B'Av. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, 1 p.m. God bless you. Have a great day and an easy fast.